It's time for the Everyman, where real man talk.
Let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life.
Hello, Everyman. It's Ethan, your boy. We have an extra special guest on today, Chris Maples, who is absolutely phenomenal and infectious with his attitude. He is so confident, bubbly, and a standout guy with a great story. You might have seen him blowing up LinkedIn recently, and we got an exclusive to have a chat with him today. Throughout the interview, there are a few technical glitches from switching over devices and the fact that his hamster was turning with the internet. But, you know, he was an overall sound guy with a great attitude, and we learned a lot along the way. So stick with it and enjoy the episode, guys.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Everyman Podcast. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Chris Maples, who is someone who I've followed on LinkedIn for a while. I've seen lots of his posts, both pre a very recent post, but he's someone who's super experienced in the world of marketing and advertising, and someone who's been very brave about opening up around his own personal story. I think for me and the rest of the guys who are hosting this podcast, it's great to get guests like Chris on in order to share real stories about real people, everyday men, as our title alludes to. So, Chris, how are you doing tonight?
Well, first off, thank you, guys. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you. I'm doing great, actually. I'm doing great, and I've been doing great for the last few weeks.
Good.
You know, I sort of ended up in this. I've ended up in this position. You know, in a position I never wanted to be in. I mean, we'll come and talk about that in terms of the sort of recent events over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, I guess, really. But yeah. I feel great. I feel really energized at the moment.
No, that's really good. Ethan, Marco, how are you boys doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing great, mate. Really excited to get Chris on. You know, we've been talking quite a lot about Chris's story, and obviously, Lewis, I know this is quite sort of a special guest to you because it's someone, you know, you've worked in similar fields. It's something you want to look to progress on yourself. So it's someone who you can sort of look up to and learn a lot of. So it's really exciting to have Chris on. My week's been top draw, not been going on. I've had a bit of tonsillitis, so I've been, you know, not 100%, but been keeping myself bedbound and things like that. What about you, Marco?
Yeah, I'm really well, guys. I'm doing really good. Yes, I'm just really intrigued to listen to what Chris has got to say, really, because you know, Lewis has told us a lot about Chris's story. So I'm just really intrigued to understand sort of like the background and what, you know, how life you know, has developed for him, you know, during his working career and, you know, just throughout life, really. So yeah. I think this podcast will be really important for a lot of listeners, because I think Chris's story is quite, you know, will be quite engaging and be quite an interesting one. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think this is going to be a good podcast, to be honest. So yeah, boys, let's take it away.
No, that's a very good way of putting it, Marco. So, Chris, I suppose my first question would be, when you were growing up, what did you want to do? What did you see your life being? What were your aspirations and goals?
Do you know what? It's really it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I had any. And I don't mean that in terms of, you know, we all about it. We grew up on a council estate in the East End of London. I grew up on the 18th floor of a tower block. And so it was interesting. I'm not trying to paint a kind of Oliver Twist lifestyle, but looking back, no one had anything, but none of us knew that. So life was just, you know, pretty normal. And then over time, my parents sort of did a bit back out of the East, and we moved up to Hyde. and they had their own business, and it sort of did okay.
Yeah.
And our life was reasonably comfortable. So I never really knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't excel at school. In fact, I didn't. Schooling wasn't any of my family were particularly sort of au fait with. What I mean by that is when we moved out of the East End was when I was choosing. It was when I would go on to senior school, and the school was chosen by my parents saying to me, "Which school do you want to?" And a kid on the estate that I met was going to this particular school. When it's that school, in fact, it closed down just after my O levels. So I didn't really have any major ambitions. In case you didn't think, I played golf at 14. So I probably harboured a minor ambition at some point to be, live a golf, but didn't really have any ambitions. And the media and advertising career that I've ended up having, and touch wood, I've still got a few years left in me. Was one that I sort of very genuinely sort of fell into.
Yeah, and so, and I think this is a story. So your story sort of resonates with probably lots of people in life who end up being successful because they don't have that. Like, you're not worried about being successful. You're just worried about being a good person and worried about actually doing, as you say, you've fallen into it and then you've just found a niche that you're good at. You've potentially developed and progressed from there. And in the world of work, we see this so often. We see young graduates who join and they're full of, I'm going to be the next CEO. I've got this marketing degree, or I've got this degree or whatever. And whilst they are probably more intelligent than I could ever be in certain aspects, I think there's something to be said for people who come up the hard way, because I think you have that ability to maybe build better personal connections with people and the ways in which people communicate. So in terms of your upbringing, in terms of maybe not being the best at school, did you find then when you went into the world of work that need to almost prove yourself enabled you to go on to have a can't even say the word, a successful career? That was hard saying that word there for some reason. Do you think struggling in school enabled you to then go on to be successful because you had maybe a little bit of, wow, I really need to kick on here and I found something that I'm good at and maybe I wasn't actually good at school?
So I wouldn't say I wasn't good at school. I went to a bad school. So I left after my, what you handsome young lads would call GCSEs, in my day were called O levels. And I was down at the end of my O levels. So I left there with 3 O levels.
Yeah.
And I managed to wangle my way into the next door school to do A levels. And when I turned up, everyone had 9, 10 or 11 O levels. And I couldn't figure out how that had happened because I wasn't a naughty kid. My career hasn't been particularly glittering, but my career demonstrates I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
So I couldn't figure out how that had happened. And I don't know, I've spent a lot of money out now. So but at my A levels, I took some GCSEs. So there was the cusp year of doing those GCSEs. I took some more of those. Took some A levels. Got an opportunity to go and study economics at university. Completely bottled it. And the reason I bottled was I didn't know anyone that had ever been to university. So I'm also there's quite a feeling amongst. So I'm probably like the 3 of you's combined age. So
you're definitely not in your 90s, Chris.
But there's definitely a feeling, some of my peer group and close, that being a white middle class 50-something bloke is a hindrance these days. And I like subscribe to that. Absolutely, I don't subscribe to that at all. But I think, and we're sort of going circling. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but having gone through the North breakdown, I've gone through over the last sort of, I mean, I said in my LinkedIn post it was 3 months ago. It's probably 6 to 8 months ago, and had been clearly building up for longer. I think what I did have when I entered the workforce was, and it's the thing that I still battle with now, incredible levels of insecurity and low self-esteem. So I guess in the early days, did that make me work really hard? Yes, I think it did. Did I want people to like me? Yes, I did. And what that probably meant was I engraved with people. And let's be clear, I've been in the media and advertising business for years, and it's a people business. And so the biggest thing, certainly in the career that I built, was being able to engage with people. And that was a learned skill, because when I changed school from GCSE or from O levels into the next school, I literally remember walking in on the first day and saying, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to be confident, Chris. And so I I guess, faked it till you made it really, you know. So I guess I definitely made it my mission in the early days for people to like me. In those days, before I understood what was going on in my own mind, I probably thought that was an ambitious mind, was riddled with insecurities, and I want people to like me. It in terms of my career, it sort of benefited.
So Chris, do you think you create a persona around wanting people to so you create a persona? Sorry, the connection. Yeah, I think it's cutting off. Chris, are you there? Hello.
Hi, Chris. Chris, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we just keep kind of losing you a bit. It just keeps going really low. Yeah, it just keeps going really robotic and.
Right. Are we good?
I don't know if we can do this halfway through, but would you like to try dialing on my phone?
Yeah, if you could try that, don't worry, I can edit anything out, so we're good.
Would that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, just give me 2 seconds then. I'm going to try and dial in on this.
Cool, thank you.
I'm really sorry about this, guys. I mean, I've got 4 here, so I don't know why it's not.
Yeah, that's all good.
Right.
Luke, can you pause the...
Can I what? Sorry.
Can you pause the live feed, or is that not possible? Once you go live, is it not?
No, it's probably the second.
Right, here we go. I'm going to log out of this.
Yeah, I've removed you from it anyway, so we're good. Yeah, this is way better already, isn't it?
Right, okay. Then I'm just going to connect my headphones to this.
Cool.
Chris, you look even younger on your phone, mate.
Well, listen, boys, you should be very pleased. I actually got my hair and beard trimmed today for the first time in about 3 months. And
really?
Because I'm living at my folks at the moment, I said, I've got to do this. I've got a podcast tonight, and I'm going to be on video, and I don't want to look like a homeless person.
You look great.
So my mother's very pleased with you. Right, give me 1 second, boys.
Brilliant.
Cool.
No worries. I think we'll just leave this in. It's part of live feeding.
Nah, I can edit.
I don't think you'll be.
Just bear with me. I'm just trying to connect now on the headphones.
That's no rush, mate. We'll just chat shake between ourselves.
Oh, there we go.
That's all I do anyway.
Brilliant.
Right, is that better for you, boys?
Yeah, way better.
Much better, Chris. Thank you.
That was good.
No problem at all. Apologies.
It's all right.
I'm just going to try and there we go. Perfect. Sorry. So you were saying about did I sort of create a persona?
Yeah.
Just repeat that question again.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you might have potentially created a persona in what you might have thought would have been a sort of a likable character, so that you could get people on your behind you in the sector that you were working on at the time. So you could, because like, what I find is in the corporate world, what people tend to do is you kind of tend to create as many friends as possible, right? So the more people that like you, the more likely you are to sort of go further in whatever it is that you're pursuing, whether it's climbing the ladder or whatnot. So I just wondered if that was something that you might have had in the back of your mind, and you might have thought, okay, well, if I become this person, people might like me more. Is that something that
do you know what? God, I would love to say I was that strategic. I really would. It wasn't that at all. So, and it goes back long before work, actually. So, there was a bit of in my first senior school that I did my O-levels in. There was a bit of bullying there. So I was definitely bullied. You guys, I don't know Lewis, we may have been in the same room before, I suspect, or you may have. I don't know whether you've seen me speak or anything, but I'm 6'9", so like I'm really tall, and luckily, given that I'm 52, I'm now. Quite fat. Well, I'm just big. But when I was growing up as a teenager, I was sort of, unbelievably tall and stick thin. And I hadn't quite figured out what hairstyle suited me. So I always loved the idea of growing my hair long, but it just used to grow out. So I must have looked like a lunatic. So there was a bit of bullying. And I was really lacking in confidence. And so, so I was like, I was going to say I was like a frightened little boy. I was like a frightened, massive boy for a lot of time. And alongside that, sorry, I'm going to go into some real terrible stereotypes now. Like comedy has always been a huge thing for me. Like I'm a real comedy nerd, and I really, sort of judge people on the comedy that they like. I don't judge them now, but like as a kid, so I'm the generation that grew up with the Young Ones and Blackadder and things like that. And I think I was always pretty quick-witted, which again, bullies tend not to be like. So I'm just going to move this in. Bullies tend not to be like that. So that probably aided and abetted some of the bullying. When I changed school, I sort of lent into that a bit more. So the thing that I love, you might have even spotted on here, that I love making people laugh. Like that's my thing. And so I just decided to sort of lean into that a little bit. And then, and obviously, through years of therapy and, growing older and learning and trying to understand yourself, you kind of realise that is a real sort of, classic trait of low, but it's, it's a great skill, but it's also redolent of people that have, low self-esteem and insecurity issues and, imposter syndrome and all of that stuff. I'm just lucky, I hope, without sounding like an arrogant dick, that I have that. I am able to talk on stage and make some of the most dry subjects reasonably entertaining. I tried stand-up comedy for some time. In fact, I'm talking to a production company tomorrow about hosting my own podcast where I go back into doing stand-up and all this sort of stuff. So I think I would love to say there was a really key strategy for me to do that. It wasn't. It was, I guess, on the one hand, right, it's a coping mechanism, isn't it? It's if you make people laugh, they tend not to bully you. It's also the quickest way to get people to like you. So, and also you can't just be a court jester. I had, without wanting to sound like Liam Neeson, I've got a certain set of skills. I know, like funnily enough, in the, in the career, in the trajectory of my career, given that I've been riddled with insecurities and low self-esteem and, elements of imposter syndrome and elements of I'm not enough and elements of I don't belong and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
All of that, none of it ever applied to the job I was doing. I've always
I had absolute confidence in my ability to do the job. It's being an adult where I struggle with the rest of it, and clearly that's all built up. And the thing that sparked my breakdown was the end of my marriage. But that's a huge contributor to it. But clearly this stuff had been laying there sort of dormant for a long time. Sorry, that was a really rambling answer. Does that answer at all your question?
Yeah, no, for sure, man, for sure.
I mean, Chris, just leading on to off Marco's comment there, something I've sort of dealt with my whole life is sort of my weight. I'm 6'2" myself, obviously, a tall lad myself, and unfortunately I'm sort of on the broader spectrum weight-wise. So like at one point I was like 37, 38 stone. So I was really heavy. And for me, I always tried to be the funny guy, so I wouldn't be identified as the fat guy, because I think being fat is it's like a harsh word. I know it's used so much now, but back when I was younger, it was a harsh word, and so I would try and be the funny guy rather than the fat guy. And I created this persona, like yourself, in a way, not strategically, but just in a way to try and sort of alleviate the pressure of not being sort of identified as different to everyone else. Something I struggle with now a lot is trying to break down that barrier from being the funny guy to now being an adult and be taken seriously. I just want to know how you progressed and transitioned to your working life and got over that barrier of sort of being the sort of guy that everyone likes, maybe sort of the funny guy, and being sort of becoming the professional that you were and that you still are today. I just didn't know if there's any sort of way you could help me give me some insight, if that's possible.
Well, look, what I'd say is this. It's ironic, right? Given, your relative size and scale, my relative size and scale, the one thing teenagers don't want to do is stand out. And what we had was a physical manifestation of standing out. And so trying to be the funny guy, as it sounds like we both did, bizarrely makes the other things that make you stand out less obvious. So you use the funny thing as the camouflage, and I did the same thing. Now, what I would say is this, and I think, do you know what? I think, by the way, sorry, this is a weird time to come up and say this 22 minutes in the podcast. The fact that 3 of you at your age are doing this thing means that you are being taken seriously, means that you're not just, you are greater than the sum of your parts. And again, I've got no sort of massive levels of I've got no silver bullet or no instruction manual as to how to transition. What I've found, and actually I think your generation and the generation before, coming up behind you are much better at than we were, is just sort of being, I hate this sort of phrase, this be your authentic self. But I think people are much more themselves now than they ever were when I was first coming through. And in fact, what I think is important is, it's ironic because given that I've become the sort of, the poster boy for having a breakdown recently via the medium of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fucking cesspool, right? It is a despicable place at the best of times.
Agree.
But and the thing that and social media generally, the thing that has really driven me mad, and actually, so I'm a consultant now, and in fact, the last role I had at Also Trader, who, by the way, through my breakdown were amazing. I couldn't rate them more highly. But I joined that business as a consultant. I had no intention of staying there full time, and I, ended up, we went into lockdown, and I managed a team, and they were amazing, and ended up there. But the thing that drives me most mad in industry generally at the moment is people's progression, people's career development, people's, trajectory seems to be based much more on their opinion than the work.
Yeah.
Social media does a great job of that, right? And I have always maintained the work, right? You want to be taken seriously, do a good job. And if you do a good job, all bets are off, right? You know what I mean? If you do a good job, you can be the funny guy, you can be the guy that sings in the office, you can be whoever. Within within boundaries of decency and legality and all of that stuff. And actually, I think it is much more. So I've been a CEO twice in my life, not of particularly big organisations. Once of a film school, once of a gaming business, and I've worked for incredible CEOs. Daniel Ek at Spotify, is the most incredible person I've ever come across in my professional career. I mean, genuinely, he's one of those guys. He is a genius. But if he's talking to me about work, then you answer the questions about work. But if you're hanging out with him, you can be yourself. And I think that is. I don't believe now that there are different roles you have to play at work. I think if you're good at the job, I mean, there's a great example, right? When I grew up in work, for the first 20 odd years I worked, I wore a suit and a shirt and a tie every single day. And for 15 of those years, I'm not sure I ever left the office. Well, what fucking difference does it make what you're wearing? Of course, these days, everyone is more casually attired, and that's all fine. And I think it's the same about, being having outside interests, or being funny, or keeping the spirits up, or doing something. Like, I think you can be more real now. I do think that. And frankly, if you're working in a company that doesn't accept you for who you are, in whatever fashion that is, well, then you're in the wrong company. That's what I would say. And in my experience, actually, I've been lucky enough never to have worked in a particularly, well, not since right at the beginning, in any kind of prejudicial business. So, Jesus Christ, every answer I give is about a 20-minute monologue.
Oh, mate, this is great.
I mean,
we're enjoying this.
I must have, for all the high hopes you had of having me on this podcast, fuck me, I must have quelled those expectations massively already.
No, honestly, take it away, man. We're enjoying this. We're enjoying this, yeah.
But I do genuinely believe, be great at what you do. Be great at what you do. Yeah. And I've done a lot of, in the past, there's a thing called Speakers for Schools, where you go and speak at sixth form and talk about your experience. And I was lucky enough, given I bottled university, over my time, I've been lucky enough to speak twice at Oxford, once at the London Business School, once at St Andrews, I feel like somewhere else. And I try and live by this now if I possibly can, but I think it's absolutely vital, from being an apprentice or a graduate or a school leaver coming into business all the way through your life. And that is, be interesting and be interested. Look, be interested in what people are talking about, be interested in the job you're doing, and be interesting. Have an opinion, have a point of view. And I think that's where the really good stuff is.
Yeah, for me, I can resonate with what you're saying, and with regards to trying to probably be the best version of yourself, in terms of, like, bring your personality to your job, bring your personality to what you're doing. Because as I've got older through my career, I've always felt like I have a level of ability, but then, like, now I'm sat here at 30, I feel when I'm on project calls or I'm at meetings at work, I try to make sure I have a laugh. I try to make sure that I'm talking about, even if it slightly derails the conversation and we talk about things that I know people are going to enjoy or spark a bit of a debate or something, I try to do that instead of, and I think that's with a little bit of experience. You move away from thinking, oh, I have to be super serious all of the time, because then you're a boring person to work with. I find if someone's just talking about work 24/7, like, and I might respect that they're good at their job, but the likelihood of me then really wanting to go above and beyond for them, and them probably wanting to go above and beyond for me, because we're not at that sort of personal level of connection where we've both opened up a little bit. I fuck up, you fuck up. Like, actually, I'm not very good at this, or whatever. I think all of those things, being really true and honest to yourself whilst doing a good job, really does help you in actually doing a good job. Because I think that there's that quote where people will always remember how you made them feel. So in work, if people find you as really pleasant, funny, engaging, interested in them, and interested in the work they do or who they are as a person, they're more likely to want to speak to you and work with you as well. So that's definitely something, as I've got older, I've tried to become more consciously aware of. But equally to Chris, I've definitely had times in my career where I've really struggled with probably put myself under far too much pressure. So Ethan, we've spoke about this before. So I ended up joining our business right at the bottom. So I joined at the phones on the phones as like a telephone agent, sort of selling broadband and stuff to people, having been fairly successful prior, not anywhere near where I ultimately want to be, but to a level where I never thought I would take such a step back in my career. And that was such a great experience. As I sit here now, 4 years ago, whatever it was really humbling. It was just step back in terms of actually, I needed probably a little bit of a reality check in my personality. I kind of lost who I really was and I was trying to be someone else all the time instead of just being my authentic self. So I was going into meetings and trying to be really serious or talk about things that I didn't really know, versus stepping back to just being someone on the phones selling broadband. It was a real humbling, sit back down, start again experience. And I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. I'm not quite where I was in previous career, but I don't think that necessarily makes a huge difference for my overall well-being. And if I could give any advice to anyone out there around career, from my own experience, it would be, don't chase what you think you need or you think to have in your life. Like, just try and do the things that make you happiest. That's what I've found in my career. If I'm just doing something that I enjoy, that I'm actually interested in, I perform way better and I don't get half as stressed or like life is really shit or this job's shit because I'm not actually interested in it. Now I'm doing something that I actually am interested in and I'm passionate about. It doesn't really feel like work anymore.
Well, look. I think there's a there's a couple of things in that I think are really important. And by the way, I am the world's greatest at giving advice. I'm not suggesting I took it all myself, but here's what I'm going to say. Well, first off, specific to you, Luce, you know that you get to realise at a certain age that in those meetings where you sat there thinking, Jesus, everyone knows what they're doing and I'm not quite up to this. Well, no one knows what they're doing. Or rather, the only thing that's different is the level of confidence by which people decide to make themselves known. And of course, we're all, what's that? I mean, it's about social media, but it could be used as an example about meetings, which is social media is where you compare your internal life to other people's external life, right? Yeah. So I quite often say about my Facebook profile, because I'm 52, so I've still got a Facebook profile. I'd fucking love to meet that guy. His life looks amazing. Because all I do is post photos of me and the kids on there. I've got 4 kids. I post photos of me and the kids on there, right? And it's the same in meetings, because you're sitting there. Of course, what we go through is we sit in meetings thinking, fuck me, everyone really... Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this? I am, aren't I?
Yeah, swear.
Do your thing.
But it's like, we sit there going, fuck me, everyone really knows what they're doing and I really don't. Of course, it's bullshit. Of course they don't. And by the way, look, I think I'm pretty good at what I do, right? But aside from having a massive breakdown in an episode over the last 12 months, having grown up with and continue to have low self-esteem and lack of, lack of self-confidence and all of that stuff, I back myself in any job. And I changed career from working in the media industry to going to run an educational institution where I genuinely didn't fucking know the first thing about how to run that, to be CEO of the film school. I had no concept of how to do that. And of course you get there and of course you can do it. You know how to do things. So there's that. What's the other thing I was going to say? You can sum up... sorry, actually, I'm going to go back a step on that. So, whilst the pressure that is on a certain generation to be successful, to be ambitious, to develop, to grow, to learn, is fundamentally driven by money, right? It is fucking hard to be a 23-year-old coming out of university now. right?
Oh yeah.
But you know, trying to get on the property ladder, trying to fucking rent a place anywhere near an industry that's still going. So fundamentally, you're saying, you know, live and work in London, more or less, or one of the other major conurbations. But look, you know, being able to live, you know, so obviously they've got this enormous challenge, which is in order to be able to do some of the things that have been normal for other generations, I'm going to have to, I've got to be successful.
Yeah.
So I get that. The other thing I'm going to say is, you know, God, I wish I could remember the comedy sketch. I think it's a Fry and Laurie sketch where there was someone in it called Mr. Business. And you see people in meetings all the time, don't you, that are laying down loads of fucking jargon. And LinkedIn is the greatest of it. I mean, at Adweek a few years ago, me and a guy called John O'Donnell used to do a late night comedy review of Adweek called The Big Mistake. And one of the bits I did was a sketch about a dad telling his son a bedtime story about 3 superheroes, and the superheroes were Vlogman, Check-In Boy, and the Massive Linker. And that was, I won't tell you their names now, but one of them was a bloke in the industry who started a vlog. It's like, for what possible benefit are you doing that? Someone else was continually pontificating on LinkedIn about their opinions about everything, and the other person used to check into business class all the time. And it's like, why are you all you're doing when you're checking into business class. So I was lucky enough, right? In lots of my career, I used to fly to America a lot and I flew business class. Let's be clear, the reason I flew business class was because the occupational health people had said I could fly business class because I was 6'9". There's only been one time in my life where I've paid for business class flights out of my own pocket, and that was on my honeymoon. And let's be clear, that's pretty fucking unlikely it's ever going to happen again in my life. So I used to fly business class all the time. Yeah. If you're checking into a business class, oh mate, yeah, 100%. Fuck me, 100%. Yeah. Oh, listen. But the point is this: if I'm checking into business class flights on places like Facebook, then all of my other friends that fly business class don't give a fuck. And people that are never going to fly business class are seeing me checking into business class. So fundamentally, all I'm really doing is showing off to people that aren't going to fly business class. Yeah. And it's and you get a lot of that, pontificate about things on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So what, sorry, this is a really long rambling answer again. So that isn't, the times when I've sat in meetings or I've been at conferences or I've mostly on LinkedIn. I mean, there's a great friend of mine, Bruce Daisley, who used to run Twitter. He's a great pal of mine. He's been enormous.
I am trying to get him on. He did say he did consider it, and then he hasn't come back. So anything you can do to get Bruce on would be great.
Bruce ran Twitter. He was VP for Europe for Twitter. Bruce Daisley. He's now got the number one bit. He's got the number one work podcast in the country called Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat. He's published 2 books. Bruce is, aside from how fucking brilliant Bruce is, so I worked with Bruce years and years and years ago. When I was running Spotify, he was running Twitter. So we were mates and we were on every single panel in the country about, whatever. And he is the most brilliant person I know. But the best, by far the best thing about Bruce is he is the most decent, supportive. He's just a fucking amazing friend. And through what I've gone through recently, there has been no one that has stood shoulder to shoulder with me like Bruce has. It's amazing. So I'll have a chat with Bruce. But I mean, the thing is, what Bruce says to me all the time, I will continually message him saying, look what this prick has been saying on LinkedIn. And he'll just say, mate, why are you following all these people? And I say, I think it's good to be angry. I think it's good to continually remind yourself to not be a fucking wanker. And that is sort of what a lot of people are, and that bit about bringing a bit of lightheartedness, bringing a bit of brevity to a meeting. If I thought, Lewis, apologies now. If I thought I was in a meeting and you were doing it because you were doing a bit, then I think you're a dickhead. If it's just who you are, because I'm the same, and you just, what you're trying to do is just connect with a person, well, that's going to make life, that makes life go so much more smoothly. Again, I think that's the third question you've asked me today, and that is a 15-minute answer.
It's impressive.
No.
Am I the shittest guest you've ever had on this?
Absolutely.
No, you might have you might have the shittest connection, but you're not the shittest guest.
Oh, sorry. I've got.
Sorry, mate. All I want to say, Chris, is you've wasted your money on your beard and haircut because no one's going to see it on your connection, pal. Sorry.
Mate, listen, I can't tell you how delighted I am as a 52-year-old man. Why anyone would? I mean, do you know what? It was traumatic enough. When you get to a certain age, you boys aren't quite there yet. So I had my haircut, my beard trimmed. I went into this Turkish barbers. I'm living with my folks, and I went into Turkish barbers, and it's like going to Alton Towers. You don't know what's happening next. So I went in, and they cut your hair. Then they set fire to my ears. Then they say. And then they say, you know, there's two of you on here, definitely. This is going to come to you at some point, where they sort of lean in and whisper gently, do you want me to cut your eyebrows? Man, I'll tell you what, there is a fucking, talk about low self-esteem. And throughout all this, you're just staring at yourself in the mirror for an hour. Anyway, so I'm glad no one's going to see me. But don't worry, I'll send you boys a picture on an email of me.
Yeah, and we'll get it added. Don't worry, Chris. We'll get it added. And just my mum does my eyebrows, Chris. Don't worry,
mate. Do you know what? Jesus Christ. Well, I'll tell you what. I've heard. Funnily enough, I think I might have said this. Oh no, I didn't say. So I suffer from a lower back condition called sacroiliac joint dysfunction, which basically means that my tailbone gets popped out, and my pelvis gets locked in a certain. Anyway, I had to go and see. It's been a nightmare for a week, and I finally got an appointment with my man on Tuesday. And I mean, again, he said, you know the easiest way you might have done this. He said to me, how do you cut your toenails? And part of me was like, fucking hell, can he see them through my socks? Why is he saying that? And again, it's like, oh right, Jesus. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling, and I'm really not dressed for it.
It's all right, mate. My mum cuts my toenails as well. I'm too fat to bend down these days.
Well, good for you, man. Good for you. My mother, I think, would definitely tell me where to get off on that front.
Yeah, my mum does all sorts for me, Chris. She shaves me back. She cuts my eyebrows, does my toenails. Bless her. She's the same.
She wipes your ass as well, does she, Ethan?
She doesn't. I'm still doing that for now, but it's on the cards. You know, a couple more months.
So your mum does the back sack and crack. I mean, that is a lovely relationship you got with your mum there, man.
Yeah, he repays the favour as well.
No, Lewis. No,
blimey.
I was going to say, my mum watches this and listens to this, and she's a massive fan of it. And we'll have a call on a Monday after the episode drops, or a Tuesday. And she said to me just yesterday, she went, mind, Ethan, I loved last week's episode, but you've got to stop swearing so much. I can't wait to get a fucking load of you, Chris. Jesus fucking Christ, mate.
Listen, what's your mum's name?
Angie.
Say that again, Angie.
Angie, yeah.
So, Angie, I'm from the bottom of my heart. I'm so sorry. I did ask if I was allowed to swear, and the other two guys said I wasn't. But your son said, "Yeah, go for it. We love it. The more, the merrier." So, from the bottom of my heart, Angie, I'd love to meet you, Angie, and I'll do the whole thing again without swearing.
Top man, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, God, that's brilliant. To be fair, this is a cracking way to go through it, and I think it's really great when you naturally do swear. Anyway, I find it really hard to not swear. Actually, it's just natural in my conversation to say fuck, shit, or whatever. Wow, I feel like I was 12 trying to prove that I can swear there. That really wasn't cool.
What I loved is that the three of us didn't crack a smile at all at that.
Yeah, no,
point.
yeah,
we just let you wallow in that. Yeah.
Thanks,
brilliant.
Thanks, lads. Really appreciate that. So, Chris, in terms of your where you've been through Spotify, you went through to it was the film school after Spotify, or was it?
Yeah, it was Microsoft, then Spotify, then the film school. Then I was consulting for a couple of years. I ended up at Auto Trader as a consultant. And then, as luck would have it, part of my remit was to find someone to do this job. I really liked the team. I got some, made some good headroads with the team. And then, then we went into lockdown. So, sorry, you were going to say that. So that's been the trajectory. Before then was a lot of TV and radio and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of through that, obviously we will come to you've described it as well as the breakdown part, but throughout your career prior to the breakdown, did you experience much around mental health? Was it something that you struggled with ahead of it, or was it something that you just kept putting off? Actually, I'm fine. It's all right. I don't need to worry. If you had a low day, well, you would just crack on, and you kept putting it away. Or was it something that you've sort of had support in your life for years?
Yeah,
and years,
yeah. No, so I certainly haven't had support. When I was married previously. So when I said I used to own this house, it was with the mother of my older two children. And when her and I divorced, I had about 2 years of therapy, 2.5 years, I think, of therapy. And I think that was a really eye-opening sort of, beginning to understand the things that made me the person who I was. So I think that the honest answer to that was, for years and years and years, I have struggled with insecurity. So, and this has happened genuinely in my most in inverted commas, successful parts of my career, and in the lower points of my career. I would, I used to say to people, if I was having a one-to-one with a boss, there would be, genuinely, I wouldn't know going into a one-to-one whether I was going to be promoted or fired. And so that sort of insecurity, you're never quite sure your own abilities. You feel like you're not doing a great job, all that sort of stuff. But I'm not sure I was aware that was driven by low self-esteem, insecurity, all of that stuff. I either thought, well, I'm not sure I gave it much thought, to be honest. But if I did, I either thought, I assume everyone feels like that, or am I the only person that feels like that? But I was never aware that was a sort of mental health condition. And in fact, building up to, the sort of episode that really sparked, the way I described it. Sorry, I've been on a previous podcast, but as a different audience, I think. But I described it as I think I was like a balloon, where what was happening was an awful lot of that was pumping up the balloon was actually unhappiness and insecurities and various different things that had gone on in my life that internally I didn't realise I was battling with. And so on the outside, it's still like a balloon, like a really magical, lovely, joyous thing. But I was getting more and more full of more and more things that were causing me anxiety. And then bang, the balloon bursts. And that drop happened really fucking quickly, like really quickly. And I am still working through the ramifications of all the things. And I've upset huge amounts of my friends and family, and I would spend my life, because my MO would be I'd just go missing. I'd go missing for a couple of days on end, just because I couldn't face what was going on in my life. I couldn't see the future anymore, etc., etc. And actually, I actually think this is a much healthier conversation, talking about general things around life rather than the thing that went on with me. But what went on with me was a build-up of, I really don't know what my future looks like anymore. Yeah. And then all of the other things that had been inside me for a long time were coming up to the surface. And then, you try and hide it, you try and pretend it's not there, you still act you try and be sort of hail fellow well met and sort of Mr. Jolly. And then suddenly, bang, I literally couldn't cope. I couldn't cope, and I didn't want to see anyone I knew, because I didn't want people who knew me to see, A, how I was feeling, and B, what I was doing to mask that feeling. Yeah. So again, long rambling answer, right? I suspect I have had these feelings for a long time. I didn't know I didn't know how to put a name to them. I didn't think they were anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Right. And Chris, when you'd go through these episodes, so when you disappear, what would that look like? Would you be drinking? Would you just sort of have it on a getaway? Would that
most of the time? Some of the time, I would literally just be in my house. Some of the times, I would leave my house, and I would go and check into like a travel lodge. because I didn't want anyone to find me. Quite often it would involve drugs. It would involve drugs. And drugs and alcohol. And in fact, when it got to its very worst, and I basically turned up on the doorstep of my parents one day late last year and just said, I've got a real problem. At that point, and I'm not negating anything, and I'm not shying away from it, but at that point, what I thought was going on with me was that I'd become a coke addict. That's what I thought that was the problem. I thought that everything, and what I realised, going through therapy, going to meetings, was that was the thing I was using to mask how I was feeling. And so actually, I still go to meetings occasionally when I'm. It's just, and what's really interesting is that your world gets smaller. I didn't want to go hang out with friends anymore because I didn't want to. Because actually, with friends, I would talk about how I was actually feeling. Whereas in the company of strangers, I'd be the person I wanted to be. So I would pick and choose elements of my life. I would, it's amazing how in the company of strangers, how quickly I can shoehorn in that I used to run the European business at Spotify. I mean, no, let's be clear. I did that best part of 9 years ago now. So I could be the person I was, but fundamentally, I just didn't want to face up to what was going on, which was, I was 52. I've got 4 kids. I'm going through another divorce, and financially, I'm in a really difficult place. Emotionally, I'm shot to pieces. Professionally, I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I couldn't see past my hand. And rather than learn to cope and deal with those things, I actually just buried my head in the sand. And burying my head in the sand would literally be either lying in a travel lodge with my phone face down so that no one could see me, or I'm trying to pick off some of the more depressing aspects of it, or doing karaoke in a room of strangers in a bar in Hemel Hempstead. It was as random as that. But you know what? What I found amongst my friends and family, who and I've let loads of them down enormously. And they were very kind. And the intro where we talked about, the post I put on LinkedIn and how brave I was. Let's be clear. There was no part of me that thought I was starting a movement. There was no part of me that thought, gosh, this is a really brave post. I didn't know how to put on to LinkedIn, by the way, I need a job or I need some consultancy work. Yeah. And I knew there were enough people in the industry because, I've been around a lot. Basically, if you've been in the same industry for, blimey, it's just gone 33 years. A lot of people had noticed I'd been away. And also, I hadn't been at work for 4 months. And then I'd agreed to leave. I sort of worked out how to get out of how to exit Auto Trader in the most elegant way for them and for me. I was literally, and I wrote that post. I mean, you know what? I haven't really reread it again, but I'm sure at times people think I probably, drafted that post. I wrote that post in a soft play centre in Amersham while my 2 little boys were in the soft play, and it was like, you know what? You got to start earning some money. And I wrote it, and it was like a stream of consciousness. But what I would say is, there were 2 things that really came out of it. One was there was an overwhelming amount of love and affection from people that knew me and people that didn't know me but were just connected with me on LinkedIn. Yeah. There were 3 things. One was this overwhelming love and affection. 2 was this, yes, mate, I've been there. Lewis reached out to me. Like, there was an overwhelming number of people. Sorry, I've used overwhelming so much there. A load of people went, know how you feel, buddy. Let's talk. Yeah. And thirdly, this is the thing you forget, is that what I got on there was a load of people saying, I remember this time you did this thing for me and there was no upside for you. You did it because you're a decent person. And that is the thing that you forget. Because going through this stuff, you think you're the worst person in the world because you've upset and hurt people, you've let people down, and you can't help but think you're the worst person in the world. And I fancy fact, the first day I saw my therapist, at the end of the hour, I said, God, am I the worst person you've ever seen? And she said, you're not even in the top 100 people I've seen this week. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what? We're all here. we're all just trying to put one foot in front of the other. And there's a quote that I always used to use. This might be not a bad way to wrap up. There's a quote I always used to use, and it's to do professionally, but it's also, I think, personally as well. And I hope I've always maintained this, which is, if you've been lucky enough to climb the ladder, it's your job to hold it steady for the people coming up. And I think that is, you know what, God, aren't I lucky that I'm in a place now? And who knows, like recovery from what I've been through is not a linear thing. Not every day gets better than the last. Sometimes I've had down days, sometimes I've up days. But I think I ended that post with, life is really hard, but I'm not giving up yet. Yeah. And you know what? The love and affection I got around that, being people reaffirming, you know what, you're a decent person. You've gone through a tough time. And I started this, and I'll probably end this now. The fact that the three of you are doing this for the betterment of other people is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm going to, when we're off the podcast, I'll share with you the idea. I'm talking to a production company again next week about this pod that I'm hopefully going to do, because one of the things that I've been really encouraged to do is to spend. So the times that I would spend my free time, where I might have spent it, you know, doing things that aren't helping. You know, do things that make you happy. And the two things that make me happy are, I love public speaking, I love performing, I love comedy, I love all of that stuff. So I'm going to try and do some stand-up again. And I love playing golf. And aside from that, I like talking to brilliant people like you that are trying to do good things. I like this. I won't go into politics, but I have a particularly strong political persuasion. And I believe in life there are two types of people. So it's not quite as binary as this. Some people believe in me and other people believe in us. And I believe in us. I believe in us. And I think, you know what? In your lowest possible ebb, at my lowest possible time, when I had, sorry, Ange, when I had fucked off people around me, let people around me who loved me, let them down, made them scared, made them worried, made them, you know, in that worst possible moment, the amount of, they just went, we're here. And that, you know what, that's really important. I really hope that was of any use. I feel like I've just ranted on for an hour.
No, I think that was truly from the heart, resonated with me completely. But we'll not go into it too much. But I think we've just lost Chris there slightly. Maybe his phone's died. I think
you just got sick. I think he got sick. Yeah, he got sick of you vibes. I don't know who wanted to talk more, you or him.
No, sorry, I don't know what happened there. It just suddenly cut out for no reason.
I was saying, Chris, he got sick of hearing Lewis talk all the time.
No. Sorry, Lewis. No, it just literally cut out. Sorry, say that again, Lewis. You were saying saying I'm incredibly tall, really handsome. What was it? What was the other thing?
wicked crack. Yeah. I think it's one of those where a lot of men. Let's try and direct this to the audience a little bit here. So if I think of my own experience, Ethan, I think of yours. Marco, I haven't been close to you in a really low time, but we all seem to just hide away at first from our problems. It's really hard for us to go, I'm really struggling, I need help, at the point before it goes to that complete self-sabotage, I've really fucked up my life. It's like as men, we really have to fuck up before we can then get the help that we need.
If I can give you one piece of advice, it would be this. You don't. That's what you're conditioned to believe. But the moment it became apparent I needed help, it felt like the world was there. It really did, and that was a truly remarkable experience.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Chris, just while I've got your mate.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris. Just while I've got your mate. I know, obviously, you've done a few podcasts, and obviously we've
this is only the second one. This is only the second one.
were you on with Gemma not long ago? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gemma. She's doing some great work, Gemma.
Yeah.
You know, and you mentioned something on her podcast about red flags and, you know, rewatching, I believe, was it The West Wing?
The West Wing, yeah.
And just, I know you've already talked about it in her podcast, but I think trying to identify red flags, and some of our listeners might be able to relate to those red flags. If you wouldn't mind maybe explaining that and just give us a couple of red flags that maybe our listeners can. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's different for different people, right? I guess we deal with stress in different ways. The three things that I look back now. So, The West Wing is my favourite TV programme by a million miles. I've seen the whole thing a million times over. I absolutely love it. But there was a very long period of time where it was the only thing I could watch. And as a girl that worked with me, an auto trader, who pointed out to me, a lovely girl called Lauren, who actually has just had a baby. So when this goes live,
Lauren.
I'll share the link with her. Congrats, Lauren. She had a beautiful little girl. I was explaining to her, and she said, because she'd been in therapy for other things, and she said that's something that someone had pointed out to her, that was part of that is you need comfort. You can't deal with surprises. You need to. It's a comfort thing. You need to. You're what she's saying. It's familiar. There's nothing scary about. You know what I mean? Like you know everything that's coming. So that was one thing. Yeah. For me, when I'm at my most stress, I overeat. I really overeat. So my weight balloons up and down. And obviously you've struggled with weight as well. So things like that, you know, classic things. I had a Peloton. I didn't go on the Peloton for a year. In fact, the Peloton's in storage now, you know, so all of this stuff that makes me happy I'd stop doing. And like I said, golf is a really big thing to me. But if I look back on the amount of times where, you know, I knew I was playing golf early the next morning, and golf is like a precious commodity for me. Like, you know, I've got 4 kids, don't get to play golf as much as I like, all that sort of stuff. It's a really precious commodity. I've been playing since I was 14. You know what? I'm a reasonably decent golfer. I play at a great club. I fucking love it. The amount of times that I cancelled golf at the last minute, and that was, I didn't want to see my friends. So they're the three that I look back on now. But what I would say to anyone is, the moment you are struggling in any way, and it's not always, you know what, it's not always easy for you to understand that you're struggling, but talk to your mates, because in my experience, there isn't a single person that dropped the ball. Well, there's a couple, but most of the world went, right, what can I do? How can I help? And that was really, you know, really amazing. I hope that's answered that question. Yeah,
mate, that was phenomenal. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And Chris, so right, we're narrowing. And this is a mental health pod. I just want to know, sort of right now, sort of where are you in terms of your mental state, and in terms of your physical state? How do you feel right now?
I feel great, actually. Now, you know, great is a relative term. I've still got to lose, I don't know, 4 stone probably. I've started getting back out through, you know, the thing I put on LinkedIn. I've got one piece of consultancy work that's I've got a kick-off about it tomorrow. There's 3 other bits that are coming down the line. So I feel pretty good about that. Because in part of this breakdown, I'd forgotten how to do any work. I didn't think I was capable. And of course, once you get back out into the market, you realise, oh, well, I've done this for years. Of course I can do this. I know what I'm doing. So,
and you'd be a huge asset to anyone, because you bring all that experience of 33 years of working in.
Well, do you know, you know what? There are things I can do. There are definitely things I can do, and there's experiences I can bring to bear, and you know, so I feel great about that now. I'm going away to play golf in 9 days' time for 4 days up in North Wales, which I can't wait for. I have taken control of lots of my, you know, some of the financial issues that I've created through what I've been doing. You know, I'm taking control of those again. I've got great friends around me, and I've begun to see there's a future. The future might not be the future that I thought I was going to have when I was married with, you know, owned a big house in Wandsworth and stuff like that. But I can see a way through now. I've got a loving family around me and some great mates. So I feel great. And so again, it is only sort of 4 months ago where I couldn't see any of that.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? What I've also learned to understand is it's not linear. Not every day's perfect. But now I guess through therapy, through understanding what's going on, through being open, I've begun to understand, oh, okay, what's a brilliant quote Tom Hanks said about someone asked him, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be? And he said, I wish I'd known this too shall pass. You know, when you're in a bad day, this too shall pass. Yeah. And I think that's sort of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And look, this has been great. You know what? I love chatting to you guys. It's been, you know, it's very rare I get the chance just to ramble on for an hour or so. But I hope, you know, there's something here.
Yeah. And
to all of you, if I can ever help, be of support, be of any use whatsoever, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? And that's something that I think I've always had that in me, but what I've learned is that you know, most people feel the same like that.
Honestly, we appreciate that, Chris. Thank you very much, mate.
Appreciate you, Chris, mate.
Yeah, appreciate it a lot.
Not at all. Listen, I really appreciate you inviting me on this. It's been a real pleasure. Apologies for the connectivity issues. I'm really sorry you couldn't see my haircut like up close and personal. Like I said, I'll send Lewis that.
You're about a foot taller than me. You're a foot taller than me. I wouldn't be able to see it anyway, so it's all right. I'd be like,
listen, Lewis. Listen, I've got children your height, and I love them all dearly. They're 5'8".
As well as
boys, listen, I've really appreciated that. I hope that was of some use.
Yeah, no, it really was. We have one more section, and then that's it. So Ethan has one big question.
All right.
Yeah, Chris. So basically, mate, obviously you've been in a dark place and you've come out the other end, and you're an absolute testament to every man, as you would like to call it. You know, and the thing is, what we like to ask our guests, you know, whether it be a podcast or a book, we call the section "Hear No Evil, See No Evil." It's an old film that you might have seen with Richard Pryor back in the day. So we basically ask our guests of a podcast or a book that sort of has guide you through either just life in general or through a darker time in your life, or something to even listen to now, you know, during the good days to keep you going. Just something for our listeners and watchers.
Well, the greatest podcast known to man, aside from the Everyman Podcast, obviously, is a podcast called The Socially Distant Sports Bar, which is it sounds a bit niche. It's a sports podcast by three Welsh guys, Ellis James, Mike Bubbins and Stefan Gennaro, and it is the funniest podcast. Honestly, it's brilliant. Socially Distant Sports Bar. So listen to that. I listen to when I struggle to sleep, and I struggle to sleep at night. I listen to podcasts all the time. Helps me sleep. Helps my mind switch off. So that's the one I would recommend most highly. I'm sorry it's not a sort of betterment podcast, but it just makes Jesus. Those boys are funny, and also they go deep dive into some sports stuff. So that's brilliant. I love that so much. And now I've been really Bob Mortimer's book, The Satsuma. Is it called The Satsuma Complex? I mean, anything with Bob Mortimer in is fantastic. So again, it's not self. If you want to read the greatest book of all time, I would say it's Joseph Heller, Catch-22. That is the book that I love, and I'm going to reread it. And if any of you play golf, there is an amazing book by a guy called Lawrence Donegan, who caddied for 1 year on the European Tour. He's a sports writer, and it's called 4 Iron to the Soul. It's the great. I mean, if you're not a golfer, don't read it. But if you are, it's great. But no, for me, it's comedy, and I'll if it's of any use, if I get this other podcast off the ground, then I will come back on at least at the end of another episode and tell you all about it. Because I'll give you the headline. Well, I won't actually, because it may not come off. But comedy's a big thing.
If it does, and you ever need a bunch of random blokes to come on, we would love.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, the socially distant sports bar. That's the one to listen to.
I've heard about that. I think I actually heard an episode, and I think the last time I heard it, I think was pretty good, to be honest.
Man, it's amazing. It's the funniest thing ever. That's what I'd be listening to.
Top man, Chris. Well, good luck, mate. Good luck with the podcast. I hope you all a success, mate. And
Yes,
keep in touch,
definitely.
no doubt.
Listen, look, listen. More importantly, good luck with what you're doing. It's amazing. The fact that you spend all this time and energy and effort doing stuff to try and help other people is amazing. You should be very, very proud of yourselves. I don't know your two mums, but I know Angie will be really proud of you, man.
Top man,
Angie, again, apologies for my language. Listen, boys, I really enjoyed that. Lewis, I'll give you a buzz tomorrow and make sure you got everything you need.
All right, mate. Appreciate that, pal. Cheers.
All right, Chris. Brilliant.
Cheers, gang.
Top man,
Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Cheers.
mate.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So, boys, we just had Chris on there. That was an episode that I really enjoyed. Chris was incredibly honest and open about talking about some of the experiences he had in his life. And yeah, it was an episode I really enjoyed, except probably the connectivity issues, which weren't as great. What's your thoughts, boys?
Yeah, so for me, mate, I'm the same. You know, Chris straight away was infectious by having a bit of crack with us. You know, he's having a bit of lad crack. You know, unfortunately, the connection wasn't the best, but you know, we managed to have a really good conversation. And the thing is, you know, Lewis, I know you're really excited to speak to Chris because he's in an avenue that you work in, and it's something that you're not at your peak. You know, I wouldn't even say you're halfway up the mountain yet, Lewis. You know, you've got so much more you can do, and you know, like I was saying on the podcast and joking as well. You know, my mum listens to this, and my mum sort of resonates with you, Lewis, because she's had her own businesses and she sympathises, and she's always saying that, you know, you can push on to be so much more. So people like this can be real infectious and real people that can pass on knowledge. Not only you, Lewis, and Mark, who I know obviously you're an independent businessman yourself, but it means we can also grow and learn. Not as much from their mistakes, but just from their lives. You know what I mean? I think everyone's got a different story to tell, and the more stories we hear, the more we can sort of learn. So I think it's been fantastic. What about you, Marco?
No, I think honestly that the guy was a proper top bloke, wasn't he? From what I got, just a genuinely nice guy, and I feel as if obviously he's just had like, you know, hurdles throughout his life that have, you know, sort of caused him to.
He could easily step over them because he's 6'9".
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Like he's a big man; he can overcome these things. And I feel as if, like, you know, obviously it's just life. Like, you know, we all have challenges, and it comes down to how we deal with them. And I feel as if he's well equipped to be able to overcome his problems. You know, he's got, you know, he's told us he's got 4 kids. You know, he's got a great, you know, network of people around him. So honestly, I just wish him the best because, you know, he's from what I could see, he's just a genuinely nice bloke who, you know, I just wish the best for, you know, and ultimately, mate, he's a great guy who I think has still got a lot to give in the industry that he's in, and honestly, I wish him the best, man. Like he's top bloke.
Yeah.
For me, go on, Ethan, mate.
No. Before I get to you, Lou, I was just about to back up what Mark was saying there. You know, he was quite frank in the fact that, you know, he didn't have a period of time where he didn't work. And Lewis, I know you've been there. You know, I've been there with my back where I didn't work, obviously, and that had a massive mental effect on myself. Mark, you know, obviously you've just got into your own sort of independent sort of business yourself. So we've all been at times, and there's going to be people out there, we've all been at times where we have had that almost worry of like, where's my next paycheck coming from? Can I feed myself? Can I feed my kids? Can I put the gas electric on? You know, we didn't really get into that with Chris as much. And I appreciate, obviously, I would love to have Chris on again. You know, hopefully when he's recharged his hamster and fed it for the broadband to work properly. But, you know, there's so much he could tell us. And the fact that he was so honest and say, look, I'm going to hold my hands up. I'm going through a tough time, but I want to get out there. I've got a lot to give. And, you know, life's not over for him yet. You know, he may be down, but he's not out. And I think that was really refreshing. What about you, Lou? Sorry, your point.
No, I was just going to say there was a few things that really stuck out for me with Chris. There was, firstly, he said he was so grateful to be on the pod, which I just didn't. I'm not saying I ever didn't think he would say that, but it was nice to hear how complimentary he was about the work that we're doing and what we're trying to do, because we're not trying to sell anything. We're not trying to be anything other than a voice for giving people a voice who have lessons that other people can learn from, or giving people a voice to talk about their own personal experiences in the hope to make other people not feel alone. Because we've all had shit times in our life, and I can tell you what he was saying around hiding away and things. Ethan, I remember when I've gone through bad times. We've talked about it before, like losing my business. I don't think I spoke to anyone for months, like anyone other than Harriet. I literally just buried myself away out of shame, embarrassment. Like, is this really happening? I can't believe I've lost whatever. And it doesn't have to be necessarily just career. I think men in general, there's like a pride part to it where we don't feel, we almost feel we have to be a certain person in order to get respect and for people to want to be around us, when actually true friends are there irrespective of your status or your employment or if you've got money or whatever. And I've definitely learned that, and I didn't realize that at the time. So that part really stuck with me, because at times I felt like he was describing myself to a degree in terms of how he coped with it. Not the drugs, it's not something that's ever been for me, but in terms of how he felt like he had to just remove himself from society and his social network, because that's what I do, and I probably need to not do that because it makes my situations worse instead of just facing up to things. But one thing, Ethan, I probably wanted to ask you around this, and we did touch about it, where he was describing himself as like a clown, basically, as the funny jester type. That is you to a T. That has always been you. We've been friends for 12 years. You have always put on a facade of this super happy, funny, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'll make everyone laugh. And where he said you almost use your humor as camouflage from how you feel about your other insecurities, I've never really looked at it like that. But is that something that resonated with you when he said it?
Yeah, Lou, for sure. I think for me, it was very similar to my situation. You know, I bounced from school to school. You know, I was bullied quite a lot when I was younger because of my weight, and I struggled to find the balance. So what I would do is, you know, rather than be identified as just the fat kid, you know, I start become a bit more quick-witted. And you know, my mom gets a shout out more than Rob and Ryan these days, but she would, you know,
she did well this episode, didn't she?
She did really. She's going to be buzzing.
Shout out to Big Ange.
Shout out to Big Ange. Although she's not going to like the fact that I'm now shaving her bum as she's shaving my bum and cracking all that. So thanks for that, Lewis.
Is it like a 69? Is it like a 69 of shaving?
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. That's disgusting. But you know, my mum does a lot for me, and yes, she does shave me back. But you know, I've got to keep clean. You know what I mean? But everything else, I shave. I shave everything. I shave my own bum. I shave my own front. She just does me back. Doesn't go any lower. But no. So for me, she does do me toenails because I'm too fat because I can't breathe when I bend down. That is funny. I can't breathe when I'm talking either because I've got tonsillitis. So you just see me just fucking trying to breathe. But you know,
I'm actually crying.
That's funny. But the thing is, I always didn't want to be the fat guy because, you know, it's so cliche. But when I was in high school, if you were fat, people would think you'd be fat and greasy and you'd smell funny. And, you know, people would make up things like, oh, you smell. And I was the most hygienic person ever growing up. Like, my mum always had influence of, you wash your bits, you know, 2 showers a day.
Oh, she'll do it for you.
No. But you know, I always had my mum. It's fucking disgusting animals to pay is. But you know, I'd have the nicest aftershave and have nice clothes that my mum would provide. You know, so I try to just spin it and make people like it by being funny and quick-witted. Now, I remember going back to my other point. Sometimes I'd be so upset coming home from school, and me and my mum would sit and would work out comebacks because my mum didn't want me to go to school ill-prepared. So, you know, she would teach me funny, quick-witted things to combat the bullies. And that's, I think, where I started picking up how to be quick-witted, how to be funny, how to turn a negative, not into a positive, but into a joke. You know, and I think for me, ever since, it's stuck with us. And I don't think I'm a fraud, because I like to think of myself as I like to be a bubbly guy. I like to talk to everyone. You know, I can be, if I have a drink, sometimes I can be a cock, like, and I've ruined relationships when I've had a drink. That's why I don't do it as much these days. But, you know, being a chubby guy, I don't let people just see a fat kid or a fat man. You know, they've got to get to know me and have that connection with me, and I'll change your opinion within 4 sentences. And people won't walk away thinking, that fat fuck. They'll think, look, that funny bastard back there. You know, so that's for me. I really resonated, and I've gone around the houses there. Didn't help that Marco was fucking making a picnic while I was fucking telling a nice story as well. So thanks for that, Marco. Fucking
mate, a man's got to eat, man.
Man's got to eat. Man's got to eat. But it was a great episode overall, and I've had an absolute great time with Chris. You know, and I hope we get it back.
I just wish his connection was better. That was all. Yeah. Because I think if he had good connection and a microphone,
like me and Ethan,
yeah, like you two without a microphone, it makes such a difference. Like it really does. If you hear the difference between, well, Marco, if you hear the difference between mine and Ethan's, and Ethan, you hear the difference between mine and Marco's, it just sounds completely different, doesn't it?
100%. That's true enough.
All I hear is Lewis trying to get a word in edgeways, and Marco making a fucking 3-course meal whenever I'm talking. That's all I hear from the pairs.
And are you just jealous that you're not eating a 3-course meal?
Yeah, I'm gonna go do it now.
If you want some, bro, shout me, bro. I can swing by, bro.
Yeah.
Cheers, bro. Yeah.
But no, boys, you both smashed that there. So well done. That's another episode down. Well done. So thank you for tonight, and thank you to all the listeners for sticking with it. It was a tough one with the connection, but hopefully you got stuff from the conversation, like I did, like we all did, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Until see you later, guys.
Let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life.